thought quiet night in meant we were pressing pause on the world for a few hours. Her show, my game, the kind of truce couples sign without paperwork. It was one of those sticky Tuesdays that smelled like leftover rain and hot cables behind the TV. I burned the chicken on the back deck because the striker on my team finally remembered how to score, and I couldn't stop checking the captions. She had her feet tucked under her on the den sofa, a glass, then a bottle, then another, laughter bouncing off the hall like loose change. It felt domestic in the small way that makes you relax your shoulders. I went to kiss the top of her head goodnight. She was folded sideways, asleep the way kids sleep on long car rides, mouth open, one arm dangling. The wine glass balanced on the armrest like it was daring gravity. I picked up her ankles to tuck a pillow under when her watch woke up, a soft rectangle of light at her wrist. A message slid across the black like a tiny billboard. Can't do that, lol. My husband would beat 7 shades out of me right now. For a second, my brain tried to put it in a box labeled joke. The box fell apart. My hand tapped the screen before I could decide not to. The conversation unscrolled like a receipt you don't want to read. Name at the top, Caleb. Not a stranger, not my best friend, but close enough to have standings on our Thursday five-a-side team and opinions about my grill technique. He was the guy who smiled through losing and still talked trash like he'd invented competitive mediocrity. And there they were, messages stacked across weeks, banter about the league, memes. That harmless until it's not teasing about her favorite show. Saturday mornings, Monday at lunch, Wednesday at 11:47 p.m. when she told him no one would ever know. I'm good at keeping secrets. I stood over the woman I'd promised to grow old with and read the version of her that fit on a watch. The den light made the room look smaller. My heart learned a new rhythm that didn't ask for permission. I put a blanket over her. I put the bottle in the sink. It clanged like a verdict. I walked outside to the work van because men wired like me keep moving when things are about to collapse. I sat with my forehead on the steering wheel. I don't remember deciding to breathe. At 5:30, with a sky the color of a bruise, I grabbed the travel mug I'd stupidly filled with Coke and vodka, like courage came pre-mixed, and headed for the old rail line that splits town. 2 dog walkers rounded the bend, leashes spelling cursive between them. One of them had the kind of eyes that have seen enough to recognize bad news. "You okay?" she asked, like she already knew the answer. "My wife," I said. "Her watch. Him. It's ugly." She put up her hand like a crossing guard. "Don't drink, brave. You'll burn down every good thing you still have." I stared at the mug, at my shaking hand. I threw it into the brush, and the metallic thud sounded like a church bell in a town that had forgotten God. The women nodded like teachers when you finally erased the wrong answer, and I walked until Sun started rummaging through the trees. I texted Drew, my friend. You can borrow money from without asking for a receipt. He told me where the spare key was and to sit tight on his couch. I watched the ceiling and the inside of my skull take turns being blank. When my phone lit up, "Where are you? Your van is home," I typed. "Engine trouble." Coworker swung by. I put the phone face down like it would hide me. Drew's face hardened into something I'd never seen when I told him. "Lawyer first," he said. "No war until you know the battlefield." I went home at 6 smelling like the kind of morning that ruins afternoons. Lena, my wife, met me in the hall with her arms folded like armor. "Where were you? Why is your lunch bag in the van?" "We're not doing small talk," I said. "I tucked you in last night. Your watch lit up. I saw it." I felt my voice go flat, the way voices do at impact. "I read everything, and I don't recognize you." It punctured her. She folded on the stairs and cried with a clean, high sound, like a kettle boiling over. "I was drunk," she said. "I never—" Caleb started. "It was stupid. Words! I would never—" The script fell out of her like it had waited backstage. "Spare room," I said. "Today. Divorce lawyer tomorrow. I took a long shower because my skin felt like it belonged to a stranger. When I came out, she was still small and silent at the bottom of the stairs, and if you've ever had to step over your own life, you know how long those 8 inches can be. An hour later, my mom called, already marching. Mary Ann does conviction like it's cardio. She didn't do anything, she said into my ear. Words aren't actions. You do not throw away a marriage over a few messages. I will not have you throwing her out on the street. She begged another man to meet her, I said. She bragged about keeping secrets. She was drunk, my mother said, and the side she'd chosen clicked into place like a magazine and a gun. We will fix this. You young people quit too easy. There's a kind of anger that doesn't get hot. It goes cold and efficient. I picked a lawyer. I opened a bank account that didn't have both our names in the top corner. I moved half the joint funds, not as punishment, but insurance against waking up to a declined card. Ray, my father, texted a photo of a bird on the fence with a thumbs up emoji as if weather reports could stand in for parenting. The house became demilitarized space. She slept in the spare room. I started leaving early and coming home late, not because of work, but because the smell of her shampoo turned the kitchen into a crime scene. On the second night, I remembered an old pitfall disguised as convenience. A while back, I'd set up a family iPad for my mother, used my Apple ID to get her started, kept us in the same iCloud circle because she forgot passwords like it was a hobby. The ghost of that convenience sometimes left old messages hanging around like cigarette smoke. I dug out my old MacBook, the one with the dent in the corner from the time I dropped it out of the van, and pretended it was fine. I opened messages like a man prying open a crate he'd rather leave sealed. They loaded slow blue and gray bubbles, easing up like old men. There was her thread with Caleb, a colder cadence than the flirty fireworks on the watch, and next to it, a thread that split my scalp back from my skull, my mother and my wife. 6 months ago, Lena wrote, "He's wrapped in work and comes home already and tomorrow. I feel invisible." My mother replied, "Men are simple. Make him jealous and he'll remember you exist." A wink. It burned like acid. A week later, Lena, Caleb messaged me about the game. Should I even answer? My mother, keep it harmless. Men need a little fear. Another wink. My hands went numb the way they did when I fell off the garage roof in high school and lay there promising the sky. I'd be better if it let me stand up. I scrolled the other thread with new eyes and saw the thin ice they decided could hold weight. Caleb initiated. Lena skated. My mother whistled from the shore. I saved everything. Screenshots in a folder with a name only I knew, August Bridge. I printed some because paper makes truth heavier. I didn't know what story I'd need those pages to tell, only that believing me required more than the ache in my ribs. If you've read enough stories like mine, you know there's always a stupid interaction with the other man. Mine happened next to frozen peas. Caleb wore his hat indoors because he thought it made him look like a guy who didn't care. He froze when he saw me. "Hey," he said, voice rounded like a marble. "You weren't at 5-a-side. Everything good?" "Everything's changing," I said, and it was the truest sentence I had on me. He tried a smile. "Listen, your wife, she's flirty when she drinks. Everybody knows. Nothing happened. I never touched her." "Who messaged first?" I asked. He blinked. "It was just, I said hi after she posted about your team." "That's enough." I stepped close enough to fog his composure. "Don't message her again. Don't show up on Thursdays. If you say my name to anyone, make sure it's into your pillow." He looked for witnesses the way cowards do. I pushed my cart away like it was the only thing keeping my hands busy. 2 nights later, Drew texted me a voice memo. "You need to hear this." Caleb at a bar, a recording too crisp to be accidental, bragging to some guy that he was steering, a married woman for kicks, and if she blew her life up, that's on her. Then the line that made the room tilt. Her mother-in-law loves me. She's basically my sponsor. Sponsor. My mother, who counts favors like a two-digit combination lock. A story surfaced with the sick buoyancy of garbage. When we were 20, my dad loaned Caleb's dad money to hold up a failing plumbing business. It didn't hold. What did was the debt. I'd seen my mother remind his mother of that number at a fundraiser once, not as cruelty, at least not openly, but like she was polishing the plaque on a memorial. Add in the rumor my mother had been floating about a city maintenance contract. Caleb could help the family with, if someone said the right names in the right ears. Connect the dots, and it drew a cage. I decided the truth needed a stage. I put together the ugliest slides I've ever made. Screenshots, timestamps, a cleaned up clip of Caleb laughing about sponsorship, receipts for housework I'd paid cash for, new gutters, garage roof patch, deck boards. Billed in my wife's name because the household ledger looks cleaner that way. My mother's handwriting sweeping PAIE like she was signing a birthday card. I set my phone up to the living room TV. I invited my parents to dinner. I told Caleb to be there at 7. I timed it so Lena's therapy session would end right as the first slide warmed the glass. My parents came in first. My mom carried a pie like a peace offering she intended to win with. She looked around like she expected my wife to pop out of a cabinet. "We should all be together for this," she said. "We will," I said. "Sit down." Ray sat. Marianne hovered, then sat because control sometimes looks like patience. Caleb came in with his hat in his hands like he'd wandered into the wrong church. He didn't sit. He leaned. "This won't take long," I said, and tapped the remote. The first slide, messages. The watch, no one will ever know. The second, the bar audio. Caleb's voice filled my house, talking about my wife like she was a game you win with the right joystick. Then the word sponsor came out of his mouth attached to my mother's shadow. "This is out of context," my mother said, too fast, like she'd been waiting for her line. "Caleb?" I clicked again. Receipts, invoices billed to Lena, my mother's loops and flourishes on PAI. I clicked again. Messages between Marianne and Lena, the winks like drops of poison. "I was trying to keep your marriage alive," my mother said. She rose without deciding to. The pie edged toward the coffee table's lip. "You think it's easy? You think your father and I—" "Dad," I said, because if I looked at her, I would start shouting, and I'd promised myself not to. "Did you know about any of this?" My father looked at the TV like it was speaking a language from before he was born. "I don't know much," he said softly. "I thought your mother was helping." Caleb pressed himself into the doorway. "I never touched her," he said to the floor. "I swear." "I believe you," I said, and his eyes jumped like a rabbit. "You didn't have to touch her to set a fire. That's how gasoline works." My mother's chin trembled, but her voice didn't. "This is a stunt. You are making a scene in your own house." "Your house," I said. "Your plan. Your strings." I felt something unspool inside me. A long cable finally detaching from whatever it had been powering. "I'm done being a light you control with a switch." The front door opened. Lena stepped in wearing the kind of face you drink water slowly for. She took in the TV, the chairs, the hat waffled between Caleb's fingers. "What is this?" she asked softly, like she already knew. "A graduation," I said. I set my keys on the coffee table next to the pie no one would eat. "Congratulations, you are officially the past." "Don't be dramatic," my mother snapped. "This can be fixed." "Mom," I said, and the word felt like a bruise you press to see if it still hurts. "I'm leaving now so I don't say things I can't take back." To Lena, "I'll file tomorrow. All communication through counsel." To Caleb, "We're done sharing oxygen voluntarily." I unplugged my phone from the TV, grabbed a backpack I'd hidden by the coat rack like a coward who'd rather be prepared than brave, and walked out into a night that didn't care my life had changed. Movies tell you you'll feel relief like a warm shower after a cold run. Real life gave me a rental with thin walls and neighbors who coughed like alarm clocks. I ate cereal from a thrift store bowl, jogged along the same tracks I'd cried under, and learned that at 3 a.m., the human heart rehearses all the things it wants to say in rooms where no one is listening. I found a therapist because Drew texted me a number and I was too tired to argue. I wrote in a cheap notebook because she said naming pain gives it edges. I wrote, "Loyalty without respect is a leash." I wrote, "I am allowed to believe what I see." I wrote, "My best years are the ones I have left." That last one sounded like a bumper sticker until I stopped waking up angry and started waking up hungry. Marianne left voicemails that swung between weeping and lectures. Ray texted photos of the yard like the grass could apologize. Lena ignored certified letters until my lawyer filed for deemed service. Caleb disappeared from Thursdays like we'd turned the pitch invisible. When the decree finally thunked into my inbox as a PDF, I dragged it to a folder called Receipts and sat on the floor and laughed once, hard, because sometimes closure looks like bureaucracy, and you take what you can get. My mother fell in the kitchen 3 weeks later. Missed a step, met the tile. Ray called from Drew's number because I'd blocked hers. I stared at the phone until it stopped ringing, then put on shoes like a man borrowing his body from someone braver. She looked small in the hospital bed, bandages making gifts of her elbows. "I thought you'd let me die without seeing you," she said, and she was so good at weaponizing tenderness, I almost saluted. We talked for 50 minutes that tasted like metal. I told her what make him jealous had felt like from where I stood. She cried. I asked her to sign a transfer putting the house in my name, not because I wanted the building, but because paper is how she made love into leverage, and I needed to see if there was any love left. She said yes, then no, then maybe, then why does a signature change anything? "Because you built the prison out of signatures," I said. "If it doesn't matter, it shouldn't hurt to sign." She looked at the ceiling like God might fax her a better answer. We left it there, which is a fancy way of saying we didn't fix it. I moved to a place with a view of a parking lot and a maple tree that turned itself neon and then let go of everything overnight. I started running at dawn, coffee, a paper cup balanced on a concrete ledge where the tracks slip under a road. The woman with the dog from that first morning passed sometimes and smiled at the cup like a teacher who spots a pencil in the right hand. I didn't ask her name because not every kindness needs an address. I saw Lena outside the grocery store once. Masks off now, but the eyes are the same. We locked for a second in front of the canned tomatoes, and our faces rearranged themselves like furniture in a model home. Do I miss her? I miss the person I projected on her the way a kid draws a superhero on his bedroom wall. That person was never real, no matter how sharp the cape looked in my head. Drew told me to buy a plane ticket because grief is a view, and sometimes you need a new skyline. We looked up flights to New York in October because the leaves there do a trick my bones wanted to learn. I didn't go. Life doesn't always line up with romantic gestures. I put it on a list instead, a promise to myself in ink, because I'm sick of promises that evaporate like morning fog. I went back to 5-a-side after the guy said it was safe. No one asked. That's what mercy looks like in a locker room. A nod and the gift of not making you explain. We played ugly soccer, and I drove home with my legs shaking with the good kind of tired. I slept all the way to morning. When I woke up, the world was the same amount of unfair, and I was a small margin stronger. You want a neat ending? I wanted one too. Here's what I got. A father who calls on Sundays sometimes and tells me what the Cardinals did, and I tell him a joke. Drew told me, and we hang up before we drown. A mother who texts snippets of devotionals I read and don't answer because right now, the kindest thing I can do is not lie. A scar where the keys used to live in my pocket. A house I grew up in that may never be mine and finally doesn't have to be. A life that tastes like the first cold sip of water after a long run. And this, the night her watch lit up, saved me. Not with sirens or grand gestures, but with a quiet sentence I wrote in a cheap notebook and proved to myself one small decision at a time. Believe what you see. If you're standing in a kitchen with your hands on the counter and your heart arguing with the facts, I'm handing you permission nobody handed me. Believe the message. Believe yourself. Walk before your shadow forgets how to follow you. What would you have done if your own mother coached your wife to flirt harmlessly? Is a mortgage-free house worth the rent it charges your soul? Would you have blasted the receipts on the living room TV or walked away in silence? Tell me in the comments. What's the right ending to this story in your book? If this hit you where you didn't expect, like and subscribe so we can keep telling the kind of truths that help someone else spot the red flags before a buzzing wrist blows up their night.